TV. What was that? You better get a fresh deal and buckle up. Larry Porst II. How you doing tonight?
I'm hanging in there, Mark. It's another day, another Thursday night, and we got a good show lined up.
I tell you, I am just so excited because we kind of knew that Bama he's a nugget. He's a golden nugget. And we kind of knew that when we talked to him online and he started interacting on our podcast. And he was just one of the perfect people to take out with us because of his past profession and the way that he was trained. He is so observant to what goes on around him. And I don't think that we need to wait any longer. Why don't you just go ahead and bring them on?
Well, Bama Murdock, why don't you come on and say something here?
I don't think I've ever been anybody ever called me a golden nugget before.
I was going to call you a superstar.
Nah, that's real nice to say. That's nice to say. I'm glad to be back too. Man, I'm actually sitting here going through a lot of notes because we had a pretty interesting, 2 or 3 days, 2 nights really. It was the longest 2 weeks I've ever spent anywhere was those 2 nights with y'all.
We've heard that before.
I'll bet you have. I bet you have.
Well, I tell you what, Bama, anytime that you're ready to get started, me and Larry just want to sit back and hear your take on the weekend.
Well, I also want to let you know I'm about to have some storms or tornadoes or something come over me. So, hopefully that doesn't mess us up or anything. And excuse me for referring to notes a lot, but, if you were with us, you would have taken a lot of notes too over all the stuff that happened. So I just want to kind of cover it like this. But this was May the 15th through the 17th. And this is kind of when we had originally scheduled our B.E.A.S.T meet and greet. And a guy by the name of Spencer Jameson had taken off for those days. And he's somebody I started kind of talking to on Facebook and stuff like that. But he had made arrangements, taken off from work and stuff. And long story short, our meet and greet got canceled. And he had told me, he goes, I'm telling you, I don't care if it's raining or whatever. I've got these days off. I'm going to LBLs, kind of one of my bucket list things to do. And he said, and I think Debbie and Larry are going to meet me up there. He said, and I said, well, that's cool. Well, later on, we were talking or something, and he called me back. He said, hey, man, you want to go up there? And I'm like, sure. I mean, I'm fortunate to where my truck's always loaded. I just got to, load up some clothes and food and stuff, and I can kind of, shag out the door real fast. And I knew it was going to be hot, and man, it was supposed. And around LBL, any storm. I was telling Larry a few minutes ago because he's kind of up in that direction. I was saying, Larry, aren't you getting storms? Because any storms come through LBL. There's so much water, around that there's all these storms. But I just thought, I'm looking at the weather and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to meet him. So Larry sent us a pin that showed us on a map, on Google Maps, exactly where to go to turn in to a obscure hay field in LBL. And then there was a second pin sent that told of a fabled campsite somewhere close to that you had to drive to, with a fire pit with white rocks. Now, Spencer can testify to this. So I got there quite a bit earlier than he did. Now, on the way up, I'm kind of thinking to myself, and some of you can probably relate to this, I don't really know any of these people. I've talked to these people. I'm a moderator on the show. I've spoken to these people on Facebook or things like that, but I don't really know any of these folks. So I'm loaded up, and I've got Moose with me, and we're headed up there. And the only two people I really associate, my friends, I only really hang out with two people, and both of them said, well, man, you're kind of a loner, and what do you think about going up there and meeting these people? And I just thought, I don't know, I guess it'd be fun to go up there. So long story short, I'm thinking about this on the drive up there, and I get up there quite a bit before Spencer does, because he's driving from Virginia. And I'm telling you, he must have got up and left early, because he's driving 8.5, 9 hours to get there. Me, I'm complaining because I'm on curvy roads for 2 hours, and that's stopping and and letting Moose out some. So I get there quite a bit early, and I kind of have a tradition. I come in through Dover, Tennessee. A lot of you know where Dover is. And I like to stop at that little Sonic right there in Dover. And I kind of try to eat well, but when I pull into that Sonic, I always like to get a chocolate shake and kind of something just to, really fill myself up, because I know I'm not going to be eating on the same schedule that I'm normally eating, or the things I'm going to be eating. And I'll tell you about that later on also. But I stopped at that little Sonic, and I went on up the Trace, and I stopped at the South Welcome Station. It's always my last stop, because that's about the last place where I know I can get a good cell signal. And we always talked about nowadays, if you're out of cell signal range, you're in the wilds and wastelands, so to speak, nowadays. So I stopped at that little South Welcome station and let Moose out, and I sat on a picnic table in the shade and ate. And I noticed how heavy the dew point was, and it was so hot and heavy. Most people would call it humid, but it's really the dew point that makes it so heavy. The air was so heavy. I sit there and I'm kind of sort of trying to wait up for Spencer to get in the general area, because I know that, once he gets up in there, it's extremely easy to get lost going up in there. But I'm right on the Trace. And finally, I just thought, I'm going to go find Larry's pen. So up the Trace I go, and I'm a Tennessee LBL guy, but we're going up into Kentucky, the land of the dog men. I'm thinking, it's the first time I'm going up into dog man territory. And I find the road easily, because I've kind of researched it on some of LBL's maps and stuff, but I end up kind of driving up and down this road 5, 6, 7, 8 times, because I'm thinking, well, I know it's one of these, I know it's this cornfield, but there's a bunch of them out here. Me, I joked with Spencer later on. I said, it was kind of like one of those drive down this road till you see these 3 huge trees next to each other, those kind of directions. It was that hard to find, and there's no cell service. So eventually I just pulled over on the side of the road. There's a little creek there, a clear, beautiful, cold creek that crossed right there. And I just thought, I'm sitting here and wait on him. He showed up. Now, this is the first time I'm meeting Spencer Jameson in person. Now, if I look at my notes here, on episode 46, Spencer talks about this same trip that we're talking about now, because I knew he would have a different perspective on it, and he did. I listened to the show, and he had a much different views on a lot of things than I did. So, but this is the first time I was meeting him. So go back and listen to episode 46, and you'll hear him start talking about the same things I'm talking about now, just from another person's perspective. So he shows up, and it's like just, I don't know, meeting somebody you haven't seen in a long time, man. And of course, Moose barked at him, circled the vehicle, and all that stuff. But eventually, I think we were kind of, he did the same thing. Let's go try to find this campsite. So we actually did pull into the correct field, and we ended up reading some directions that Debbie had hand texted us. And we went back to the corner of this field to try to find this fire pit, because this is where we was going to be camping at. And we're both under the assumption that we're kind of car camping. So we're going to be able to back our vehicles right up to and throw tents out and kind of, cook, tailgate cook if you want to. So we get to tromping around there, and it's hot as all get out. And I wear those long sleeve sun shirts. I like to keep the sun off of me. So I've got one of those on. And the second we stepped in the woods, Spencer had, 20, 30 ticks just literally crawl up on him while he was just standing there. So I knew it was going to be a fantastic weekend. Because I'd already sprayed down. And they can tell you, I wear shorts a lot because I can see stuff. But I'd already sprayed down. In fact, I was maybe into coat number 2 of bug spray by this time. Just sprayed down all over. We got to looking for that campsite, and of course we couldn't find it. But something that was interesting was I saw a little rock at the edge of this cornfield, and I'm talking the corn's only maybe, what do y'all think it was? Maybe 6 inches high?
Yeah.
I mean, it was very, very small. But there was a rise at the edge of this cornfield, and of course, I'm looking at things more like a hunter looks at things, or I don't know. I kind of look at things a little more tactically and stuff. And my thought is, when I looked up and saw that little rise, I thought, man, maybe there's a little pond up there, which would be a great spot to do early hunting bow season, because it's still hot then. Animals looking for a place to drink. That'd be a great place to throw up a tree stand up there. So I'm thinking that. And we step up in the woods, and sure enough, there's a little pond up there that it was hidden. You wouldn't think there would even be one up there. And it was spring fed enough to where it was even emptying out at one end a little bit. So and there was a hill up behind it too, a wooded hill. So, I thought, man, that's by this time, man, Spencer was already in the woods. He's like a bird dog, man, when he hit the woods. And this whole time we're talking, because we've never been around each other personally. So we're talking, and I watch people, and I like to know things about people, and that's just the way I've always been. But I like to know things about people other than the subject that you're talking about. You can't just be walking around the woods talking about Bigfoot the whole dang time. You got to talk about other things. But I would watch Spencer, and he's really good at locating stick structures or stick manipulations or whatever people call them. I don't really look for them. It's not my thing, but if somebody finds one, I love to look at them because I'm neurotic and OCD about things, and I kind of look at things like a crime scene, and I want to know how these things got weaved together and some of those things like that. And I think Mark is going to put some pictures up in a few minutes when we go back to that. But anyway, we kind of got up in there, and it was windy. You know, a pretty good little wind kicking up, which made it so nice because it made it a little bit cooler. And up behind that pond was all cedars and pines and stuff like that. So there's a lot of needles on the ground, which is great for ticks. I mean, if you really want to get into good ticks, get into cedars and pines and stuff on the ground.
Yep.
But we're in there, and I'm not worried about Moose. He's always got something on to keep the ticks off of him. And Spencer found several things up there. And he would go, man, look at this. And I'd go over there and look at it. And I mean, sure enough, these are things that you walk by all the time. But if you went over and looked at it, you would go, well, man, that's odd how this crosses this way and crosses this way and it's weaved up. Well, then we kind of heard something off over when you go on over a little rise there. It kind of gets thick and jungly. I mean, it goes from fir-type trees, and y'all went up there with us, and we'll talk about that, but it kind of got really jungly. Heard a couple little cracks and noises over in there, but like I said, we had a pretty nice little, breeze going. We had enough earlier that day that I thought, man, if we're camping in the woods, we're really going to have to think about limbs falling on us and stuff. So that's the type of wind we were dealing with early in the day. So me and him kind of messed around in there a while, and he said, man, let's just kind of back on out. And I said, okay. And we're just kind of doing our thing, killing time. Well, eventually, and me and him, we had time to kind of talk about his family and background and stuff. That's what you do with people. Other people started arriving, and I don't remember exactly what time Larry arrived with Debbie in a vehicle, and Mark arrived with Shelley in a vehicle, and I'm not sure exactly what time all those people got there or not.
It was about 8:30 for me.
At night?
Yeah.
Really? It didn't seem like that late because we still had a pretty good bit of light out there.
Yeah, it was sunset when we got there.
Well, we were still in the same spot because we were wanting to know if that's where Larry and them were camping at. And sure enough, they showed up and they pulled into that spot. And we kind of stood out there a while, and all these people met each other, and all these people camped. Even Spencer's camped with all these people. I've never really met any of them in person, but I could pick Larry's voice, out of a crowd. I could pick Shelley's voice out of a crowd just from being on here and stuff. I know them, as well as you can without meeting somebody. But still, I'm the odd man out here. And Moose is doing his deal to where if he don't have something to stick in his mouth like a toy, he kind of goes around growling and you just kind of, you just got to kind of, you got to kind of treat him invisible. So he's getting used to everybody too. And we stood around there, and I think one of us kind of got the idea of, man, we better start like putting a camp together because it was going to be getting dark on us pretty quick, I think. That's why I was thinking. I was wondering how late it was. So I'd been there a while before this, and Spencer had been there a pretty good while too, I think. Well, we kind of looked. Said, well, let's not go in there to that spot because we was looking at where we had to drive in. Let's just go down the road here. Maybe it wasn't even half a mile, was it? Maybe a quarter of a mile.
Yeah,
Probably a quarter.
We just went maybe a quarter of a mile down the road. This is a paved road. And we just pulled off in a line on the right side, lined our vehicles up legally. I might add, we were legally parked this time. I'll get into that in a minute too. But we just pulled over on the side of the road, and somebody said, well, where do you want to go? And Mark said, well, let's strike out across that cornfield again, another cornfield with short corn in it. Man, we'll just camp up in the woods. So we're talking about, I don't know, maybe we're going to walk across maybe 100 yards to get across there. And like I said, we're all kind of sort of set. I'm definitely set up for car camping, okay? So I can't be lugging a big giant plastic bin across this, all the way across there to the jungle that we're going to go into. But we all kind of grabbed 2 or 3 things and we head out across there. Well, sometime while we're there, I asked Mark, because I'm just kind of trying to talk to people and feel people out or whatever. And I asked Mark, I said, why have we picked this particular spot to go to? Not that I was prying or even really being inquisitive. I just, man, why don't we pick this spot to go to? And he said, right across the road, there's a field. He goes, and we had 13 howls come from up on top of a hill and right there across that field. Well, the first thing I thought was, well, that's great. He's gonna, they're gonna put something around my ankle and chain me up out in the middle of this field, put some cameras pointing towards me, But yeah, that's what he said. And some people have probably heard this story, but he said, we got these howls, they got closer and closer, and there were a bunch of deer scattered out in that field, and we had already seen deer in that field. And as something got closer to the wood line, all the deer bunched up super close. And I'd heard this story before. So this is right where we're camping at, where that story took place. And I'm like, great. I mean, I really am. If you're going to be in the woods with anybody, you need to be in the woods with this crew for this. So we made several trips back and forth across that field. And we basically just picked a spot going into the woods like a jungle. Mark just said, well, let's go in right there. And I mean, by this time it was starting to get a little dark on us. But we did. We just walked in there, and maybe 5 yards in, it dropped off. Like maybe, what do y'all say? Maybe 5, 6 feet. There was just a little gradual drop off. Uh-huh. And the thing about it is the canopy was so thick in there that I knew it was going to be dark. But the canopy was so thick in there that it really didn't let everything grow up as much as you think that it would. I thought we're going to be bushwhacking in here, but it wasn't as grown up and jungly in there. But when we got in there and kind of walked back up out of that little dip, you realize that we're up on a plateau. And it looks to me like if the creek really got up high, it may flood all around that and you'd be up on a little island. So basically we were up on a little plateau island up there. And Mark or Larry or somebody were walking up in there, and we just kind of looked around at the biggest, flattest place that we could find. We said, man, let's just do it right here. And everybody went to work. And you could hear a little creek over there, bigger than a stream. You could hear a little creek over there. So me and Spencer went over there and started snatching up rocks, and because we was really wanting to get us a fire pit to maybe throw some little smoke up, so if it started getting buggy as it got later. But man, we started getting rocks out of that creek and bringing them up, and before too long we had a little fire pit built. And people are kind of making that trudge back and forth across that field to the vehicles. I ain't even started doing that yet. I think I walked in with my tent under my arm, and maybe that was the only thing I was carrying at the time, just because I wanted to figure out exactly where to put that at. So, man, we start making our little treks back across there and forth. And everybody's kind of, working, not really talking. I think everybody has already had such a long day because people have worked. I mean, there's people meeting us at LBL that have worked all day already. The weather is not even close to ideal temperature-wise or anything. And I kind of know that, they wouldn't be up there at LBL camping if it weren't for me and Spencer Jameson coming up there to meet him, mainly Spencer. So I knew that, and I really appreciated that. But by this time, I'm on about coating number 5 of tick spray and bug spray and stuff. But we finally get our camp set up, and I'll tell you how it was set up in a minute, because this is the way it was the whole time we were there. But this is something I kind of learned about Shelly when we were there. People get off and kind of get to doing their own little things. Well, Shelly, I see her down there messing around in the creek, and ever since I was a kid, I like rocks and and stuff like that. So I'm always a big person on rocks, and I bring rocks back from places. Well, Shelly's down there messing around in the rocks on this little creek, and man, I got down there talking to her, and we're it's funny because there we are down there going, oh, this one's pretty, and we're showing each other pretty rocks and stuff, down there on the creek. But I will say this, during this whole time, you don't realize that Mark and Debbie and Larry and Shelly does it too. They immediately, when you get there, they have recorders out. And this is what's interesting is Mark has all his own equipment. He puts his recorders out. And I don't think, Mark, you even know where other people even know where your recorders are, do they?
Not really. I've already studied the topographical maps, and I was already familiar with this area from when we took the Perjerski brothers in there.
Oh, okay.
So I was trying to get away from our camp a little bit and to get away from the creek, and we kind of felt like we were on a booger trail, and so there was a lot of sign back there. So I wanted to get that recorder away from us and close to those signs that we had found previously.
Right, and you don't really notice them doing this. I mean, these are not people that they're not really talking about what they're doing. You just are carrying on normal conversations. You don't realize, Mark's probably back in there 150 yards somewhere, putting up a recorder that's camouflaged inside things with bark and stuff on it, and it's made to where wind will not affect it at all. I mean, so you got things like that going. Cameras that shoot plot watcher style through the camp, kind of a time lapse thing. And that's just stuff that Mark does. Debbie's doing stuff, and Larry's got stuff, and Shelly's got stuff. Everybody has I felt really inadequate. There's lots of times when I asked myself what I really had to add, but everybody had equipment, and I mean, as soon as they got their stuff was out, running the whole time. And it's, I even asked Mark, and I'll kind of get into it a little bit later, if I had permission to talk about the way that they did some of their equipment, how they used it, and stuff like that, because, it's pretty neat the way they were doing things. But anyway, we got our camp set up, and I think I'd run back to the truck and eating something out of the cooler or something. We're not sitting around grilling and having marshmallows and stuff. I mean, we're maybe 3 hours into being really sticky, and we're in the clammy phase now as it's turned, dark. It's still hot, but the dew point's high. So, I mean, I'm just clammy. In the mornings, people actually put on jackets, and I would just rather be cold than even put a jacket on, because I don't think I was ever dry the whole time I was there. So, man, I think people were kind of exhausted, and we all kind of just piled up there in a circle. And this is the way the camp was set up. And I don't know if, Mark, if you have those pictures there, but when I was setting my tent up, I kind of made the joke, because I have a little 2-man tent, and once you get it set up and you put the rain fly on, it's super aerodynamic. Kind of looks like a spaceship sitting in there. And it's not an expensive deal. It's a pretty little cheapo. And it's green too, so if I'm up in the woods, you can't really see it that well either. But the great thing is it has a little vestibule on each side. So even when I'm in my tent, I can sit stuff outside and it'll stay dry. And that's what I like about it. Even though we learned very quickly not to leave any of our shoes sitting on the ground or or sitting around, because Debbie can tell you there's some, and I've had spiders before as pets. That sounds pretty generic. But there's some of the biggest spiders in there I had ever seen. Those big wolf spiders, and those things are ground hunters too. And we would find those on our tent, or just, they could just be anywhere. So I wouldn't even put my stuff in my vestibule. I was just putting all the stuff in the tent with me. But on the very back side of my tent, right where the stake went in the ground for that vestibule, was that drop off into that low-lying area. And I made the joke to somebody. I said, "Oh, great." I said, "During the night, something's going to crawl up to my they crawl up here from this low-lying area." And, I'm kind of making a joke. And I set my tent up. And so if you were sitting in front of my tent, like in my chair, you would be looking right at the fire pit that's in front of you. Mark and Shelley were in a huge tent to maybe about my 9 o'clock. Spencer, he had a little 1 or 2-man deal that was pretty neat, and it was sitting up there about maybe 11 o'clock. Now, I'm talking if you're sitting in my chair looking around, and then Larry and Davey is over here about maybe 3 o'clock. And that little creek was back in behind them, and it was really nice. You could hear that creek, but it wasn't enough to drown out, anything. Just enough to let you know that you had water there close. And the one thing I will explain is, well, between my tent and where Mark and Shelley were at, like I said, it slopes off there. So that had kind of become the spot to where the guys would walk off there and maybe go back in there about 20 yards to a really fresh fallen treetop back there. Yeah. And that's kind of where we'd go when the call of nature hit. So everybody was kind of walking through there. And the only reason I'm saying that is because that's kind of pertinent in a few minutes, Larry, isn't it? But that's where everybody was using. And so we just kind of sat around there and talked, and it could be about anything. But like, believe it or not, I'm really more of a listener. I like to listen to people talk. My sister was a professional clinical analyst. And of course, I have a degree in psychology, but I'm not sitting around trying to analyze you. I just learn a lot about people by listening to them talk, and I just enjoy listening a lot more than I like talking, which y'all are going to disagree with from watching this show. But But I mean, we sat around and you could tell that people were tired, and and we probably set up to, when do you think it was? Maybe, holy mackerel, 1:30 in the morning. It had to be
Yeah.
at least 1:37. I think who probably got up at 4 a.m. Me, I woke up all excited, at probably, I don't know, 5:30 or so. And my thing is I'm extremely structured. I mean, my meals almost I mean, I live alone, so I'm extremely structured. So my schedule is Moose's schedule too. So when you get up at 5 o'clock, he's not going to eat. He's not going to do anything because he knows something's going on. And when you start loading stuff up, he just, he's ready to go. So by this time of night, I mean, it's been that long. He still hasn't eaten anything either. And I really haven't either. But man, when it gets along about 1 or 1:30, I think everybody's pretty exhausted and sticky and sprayed down with bug spray and tick spray. And we just decided, but I'm still kind of wired up because I'm in a camp with a whole bunch of people I don't know. And I'm used to camping on my own and kind of booby trapping my area up. But I know Mark and Larry and all them. So, but anyway, but it's just the point of being there. I hear things, any little thing that happens at night. But I was tired enough to where I really was dozing in and out this first night. First person to fall asleep was Spencer Jameson. And he started snoring within 5 minutes of hitting the tent, no matter what he says. Okay? But he was, and I understand that because, man, I know Spencer was wore out. Because even when he got to LBL, I mean, he hit the ground running. I mean, when he got to LBL, he was on the jazz. And me, I'm kind of laying there and trying to go to sleep, but, man, all your stuff that's in the tent is cool and damp when you're laying on it. I think Mark can snore, and we say that on lots of shows, and he was. And he was snoring, and eventually everybody was, except for Debbie Jones. And I'm awake, but I'm kind of dozing in and out, and I've heard Debbie talk about how she hears every little noise and everything too. So I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe Debbie Jones is awake, I'm just kind of laying there. My feet is towards, if, like I said, if I'm sitting there, 2 tents are to each side of me. So my head's kind of facing the end where Mark and Shelley's big old tent's at. And my feet's at the other end. Well, maybe somewhere around 3 o'clock, I heard a coyote kick up. And I mean, it immediately, just woke me up. Because it was a long howl with some yips at the end, like a locator call. Coyotes will do it to try to hook back up with their group, or maybe they've killed something that's small enough for them to carry it to everybody, and they just want to know where everybody's at. Nonetheless, this thing kicked up, but that was it. There wasn't any more with it. Well, I guess this took place over maybe about 30 minutes. Well, before too long, it did the same call again, but it was a little closer this time. Well, this time I heard Debbie stirring around over there, and I specifically heard Debbie whisper the word coyotes or coyote. And I think what she told me she was trying to do is trying to go, Larry, do you hear this? Trying to wake Larry up. But I knew that somebody else was awake. And I'm not sure if it was that time or the last time that coyote did it, man, the whole group, man, they lit up. They were really going nuts. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sound. But, man, they really went berserk. And it's eerie for a little while. Well, I don't know if I dozed off. Now, Debbie told me later on, she said, yeah, I heard all that. She said, I even just picked up my phone and simply took a screenshot of the time, just so I would know what time it was, which was super duper smart. I didn't think of that. I was laying there all clammy, listening to the coyotes. But anyway, I don't live after the coyotes, but it was after 3:30ish that I thought someone was moving their flashlight around in their tent, and from where it was at, I thought it was Larry and Debbie in their tent, because I thought I saw a light shining around. Now maybe that was, I surely wouldn't have seen Debbie's, just her screen on her phone, but I thought I saw a light. So I'm kind of, fatigued and in and out of sleep. Well, shortly thereafter, I hear Larry walk by the tent and down the little, thing. He goes behind the head of the tent where everybody goes to relieve themselves, and that's it. And I kind of went back to sleep then. And I mentioned this the next morning. Everybody's up pretty early. You'd be surprised after that kind of day and staying up that late how early everybody, gets up to get to doing stuff. And plus it's cooler in the morning, so you're trying to you're trying to get something in the morning before the day hits. Well, I kind of casually mentioned something. Man, did you hear those coyotes last night? And Debbie's like, yeah. And, some people, I don't even think they even heard. How y'all could sleep through it, I don't know. But most people didn't hear it. But me and Debbie were kind of talking about it. And I said, well, then Larry got up and such and such. And she said, well, Larry didn't get up. And I said, shortly after the coyotes, I don't know why I have to reiterate things like it, but I go, shortly after the coyotes did their last thing, a little while after that, I said, Larry got up and walked right in front of my front vestibule and right around within 4 inches of my head. I have to laugh about it. I hate to laugh, but I have to laugh about it. And I said, and when he kind of went off that little rise, once it registered in my mind that, oh, that's Larry, I think I dozed back off because I felt comfortable that Larry's freaking going over there to pee behind the tree over there, And Debbie goes, that wasn't Larry. And Larry's still in the tent messing around this early. And I said, what? So I kind of mentioned it to her. I said, it walked right. Now, I'll explain it to you exactly the way I told it to her. This little peninsula is kind of like a little island set up. Behind their tent, it kind of goes way out to a little finger. It doesn't drop off behind their tent. And I said, well, I obviously thought it was Larry because it came from right beside your tent. And I said, the thing that I think back on now that kind of amazed me is it missed the guy wires on my tent. And I can't tell you how many times I burned my shins on those things while we were, camping there. So this thing came through and missed several guy wires to that tent. Because that thing's pretty spread out, when you get it done. And it walked right around the front and went 3 or 4 inches by my head. And I said, and then it took maybe a step off that. And I said, and I kind of just went back to sleep. And Davey goes, well, that wasn't Larry. Well, then I hear Larry's voice, either in the tent or outside. He goes, well, did you hear the zipper? Larry just comes up with stuff like this. And man, that's the first time I thought about it. I thought, no. And let me tell you what, if I'm in a camp, if I'm camping with people, a zipper's the one thing that, it wakes me up like that. That means either A, somebody's getting up, or B, something's trying to get in, or somebody's trying to get in. So Larry goes, well, did you hear the zipper? And I sat there just kind of bum-fuzzled for a second. And I said, no, I didn't hear a zipper. And Larry goes, well, it wasn't me, or said something. And listen, nothing else was said about it. That's what's funny.
Yeah.
You know, on the episode where Spencer was on, they actually mentioned it. But I didn't really think that anybody absorbed what I was saying. I didn't realize they were paying that close attention to what I was saying. Or I really didn't know if they believe me or not. Because I'm not, look, if you hang out with me, I'm not going to embellish things. I'm certainly not going to make anything up. But we just kind of, went on with our morning, and, Debbie cooking a little bit, and Moose mooching off of them, and anybody's pulling snacks out, he's mooching off of them because he's starving to death. And, but we were kind of planning our day out. Let me wet my whistle here a minute.
Well, Bama, I do remember Debbie punching me and saying she heard something walk by. But we didn't know if it was a hog, a deer. We didn't know what it was. So go ahead, Bama. Uh-oh. The storm might have got him, Mark.
He maybe froze up there.
I don't know, but I do remember Debbie saying after that she heard something walk by, and I do remember vaguely hearing something, but we couldn't tell which way it went and couldn't tell how big it was, but we did hear something.
I know Debbie put up black thread, and was any of that thread broken?
She did that on the last night we were there, and I don't believe any of it was broken. I don't think. And you've lost your guest. Congratulations.
I hope the tornado didn't come through.
I hope not either.
I tell you, I really enjoy when we take somebody out for the first time. And it wasn't that long ago that we had taken Spencer out for the first time. And it's just something about it whenever you take someone into an active area and things start ramping up. And so that was, I'm kind of like Bama. I really enjoy watching people and seeing how they are going to react to different things.
Right.
And
when we took Rodney Beasley out, and we see that eye shine about 3:30 in the morning or whatever time it was.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But yeah, it's always good to get out with somebody different because they have a different way of seeing things, a different perspective, and you still learn stuff from people that may be their first time in the field. They may look at something differently than what you look at it. And they may have some extremely valid points to things that you hadn't thought of. So,
well, that's, a lot of times you go out with people and they think they have all the answers.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how long they've been doing it. And you see them kind of look down on new people that are doing it. But I take the total opposite approach. I believe that you can learn from anybody. And really, you look at Bama's background of growing up in the country. Bama has more woodsmanship skills than I have. just from the time that he spent growing up in the woods. So,
Yeah.
so to me, it would be foolish to sit there and think, well, this guy here, he don't know nothing, and I'm going to show him everything. That is the wrong attitude to take.
That's called being arrogant.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we're going to get Bama back on here in a minute, but I didn't mention at the beginning of the show to, if you have questions, then put them in all caps and see if, and so whenever we get Bama back on, we'll make sure that we ask all these questions.
Every one of them. And Mark may have to answer them. Diane asked, did it sound heavy when it was walking? And it didn't sound extremely heavy. That's why we were wondering if it may have been a hog or a deer or even maybe a coyote. We couldn't really, it didn't sound like it was on four legs, but sometimes when you're half asleep, you don't really pay attention that well. So I don't know.
Anyway, I think I got to that. Something walked right in front of the tent. I thought this was Larry. We didn't really talk about it, the next morning, but we kind of planned our day out, and so this is what we're going to do. And it was a hot one. Holy mackerel. We decided to maybe drive down the trace into Tennessee, and we were going to stop at my spot. Now, if y'all want to listen to it, on episode 41, I kind of talked about a camping spot that I'd been at for several years. Well, they graciously decided to go down to the camping spot with me, and it was kind of neat because I hadn't been there in 4 years, and that's a long time. I didn't realize it really till I got to thinking about it. But I hadn't been there in 4 years, and I think Mark was riding with me, and Spencer was riding with me because I have a crew cab, and I wanted people to be comfortable because I knew we were going to be driving a lot and riding a lot. So Mark was with me, and Mark, my campsite was pretty remote back in there, wasn't it?
It was real remote. As a matter of fact, we had to walk in there. We had a park at a cemetery and probably had a 1/4-mile walk until we made it to where the river was.
Right. And we went into my spot, and we just kind of looked around there, and of course, there's so many pictures that I saw that they took of me pointing here and pointing there, because it was kind of nice to be able to tell someone in person where this happened and point out the different thing that happened there. But anyway, that was I kind of told that back in episode 41, if everybody wants to hear that. But the thing that we wanted to do that day, and man, I think me and Spencer probably talked about it from the time we got there. Man, we wanted to go up to the B.E.A.S.T of LBL site. That's like and I'd never been up there. I'd never been up into Kentucky in LBL. So I thought, man, we decided, we need to go up there. And of course, Larry and Mark and them are all being very accommodating. I mean, how many times have y'all even been to that place, do you think, Larry?
Larry, how many times have we been up to where the B.E.A.S.T of LBL supposedly happened?
Oh, probably 5 5 times, probably.
Yeah, I would say at least 5 times. Go ahead.
All right, I can't hear Larry. I can hear you. Okay. But anyway, we get to riding up there. Now, Larry, he drives a little faster than I do. I kind of poke along, you know, I scenery and especially if you're driving up the trace, just it's beautifully kept. It's just the whole area is beautiful. I forgot to tell you that we kind of went over there and everybody went in and we're looking for all these stick structures and stuff that morning. And we looked at the same ones and we stayed in there a while. But when we came out, well, there happened to be a ranger there or somebody that works for the Forestry Service or something there. Very nice guy. And the main thing was he told us that we were kind of parked a little too far off of the roadway, which we didn't know that. We were actually looking for some shade is what we were looking for. But we had parked off the roadway and he came out and he was very nice. What was funny, I did want to go back and touch on this, is there was actually 2 more. And they kind of dropped one guy off, didn't they, Mark?
Yeah.
And he had gone back into the woods or
looking for us.
Field. Yes, just kind of curious as to what we were doing, I think, because we had all been parked there, our vehicles all night. And so, I mean, if I drove through there and saw 4 vehicles, I would go, man, I wonder what these people are doing. So basically, he told us that, and he was very nice about it. And so I wanted to say that to say this. If you want to know what we're doing in the woods or what these people, well, I'm about to tell you what we're doing. And I mean, these are the things that these people are out here and we're out here doing in the woods. So we were traveling up to the site of the Beast of LBL. And I've heard Shelley Reed tell a story many times of, quote unquote, the one she saw. Isn't that something, how when people see one, that's what they say? The one that I saw. Well, I had heard Shelley tell this story a few times. And I think she even told it while we were sitting at camp that night. I'm not really sure. But, and I don't know, Mark, are you showing those pictures, those slides up there? Because I can't see anything on here.
I was showing them earlier.
Okay, just go through them ever how you want to. And, but anyway, we're driving up the trace and Larry will get a little ahead of you because I drive slow. And if he gets too far ahead, he'll just pull over on the side of the road and wait on you, which is great for me. But we're on our way up north on the trace, and he had pulled over on the side of the road. And I just said, well, I wonder what Larry's doing. I thought he was waiting on me. Well, Mark said, well, this is where Shelley saw hers at. And me, I was just, man, I got excited when he said that. Because I don't know if they pulled over to just kind of shoot a picture out of the vehicle or something. But me, I was like, man, I told Mark, I said, I'm going up there and getting Shelley Reed out of that vehicle. Because I want to, I want to hear, to hear the story is one thing. To stand, right there with the person and hear them tell the story. And so, man, we hopped out, and it was just like, it looked like you could take your shoes off and just go running out through that field. It was a hay field that was kind of grown up, and but she stood there and she explained to me the color of the hair and the way it laid, where it came down off the head onto the back, and exactly where it went between 2 trees. And it was really neat watching her explain. It walked right through there, and and Shelley would even explain to you, I was on the I was getting actually riding a vehicle on the passenger side. So, I'm looking out the window, and this is why I got to see it. And this is the type of day it was, and the time of day, and the type of circumstances. And it was really, I don't know, I got a lot out of it listening to her tell a story, because, if you've never seen one and you have somebody that has, then man, that may be the closest thing emotionally or that you can get to it, is talking to somebody like that. So I wanted to let her know that I really enjoyed that when we were standing out on the on the side of the trace with traffic going by. People were yelling at us sometimes, because we just pull over and throw the doors open and pile out. So people are yelling at us. But we did get up to the Beast of LBL site, and I don't know how much you want me to go into that, but it's just a very nondescript area. It's amazingly close to the trace.
Yeah, it's not what you would expect.
No, it's not at all. Mark made the comment several times, and Spencer did too, that you can hear traffic clearly down there on the trace. That's how close it was. And if you stand there and look at it, you can kind of picture where maybe the campsites went down through there. And it must have been a beautiful place, because there's some pretty deep hollows in there. And of course, there's a cemetery right, next to it. But we did tromp off down through there, and I kind of made the joke to Mark. I said, you do know that y'all could have just taken us anywhere on some road and put us out and said, here it is, here's the site. But we did go down in there, because I like to, even if it's a story or whatever, I just like to go down there and get a feeling of stuff. And I think that was the thing Spencer wanted to do too, was go in there and just kind of get a feel of it. But that was a long day, and we actually got to stop on the way back down the trace and eat. And I mean, this is when we stopped at a place that actually had some picnic tables and a grill, and I thought, man, I've got to cook up a bunch of this food, not only because it may be the only time we get to eat a really good meal, but I'd kind of brought things to cook for everybody. So we sat there and ate, and just kind of, it was neat to hang out. And we were tired, and we're 10 layers into tick spray by this time, and everybody's just sticky, and I don't think anybody's changed clothes at all. You just get to the point where you're just into it. But eventually we drove on down the trace, went back to where we were camping, and kind of walked in there, and just, I don't know, all of us just kind of collapsed, because we wanted to, just kind of hang out and relax a while. And this was on over in the afternoon. We had been out all day, running roads. Mark and Larry were showing me lots of places where other people had gone with them and stuff. So and they knew a lot of places that I didn't. So that was interesting to me too. But my body and mind is still on my schedule, and Moose's is too. So we get back to the camp, and if we're ever anywhere just for a few minutes, Moose would just sprawl out and collapse. And I had him a little mat that I'd throw down to just keep him up off the ground, because he's slick hair and he gets cold. But just, I keep reiterating the ticks and the ticks and the ticks. But I'd throw that on him and keep an eye on the ticks and stuff. But we sat there. How long do you think, Mark? We sat there till it got almost dark, and just kind of relaxing or whatever. Well, we heard a gunshot up the road. And it was up there where we had all originally parked and met each other and walked back in there to that little pond stuff. But there was a shot up there, and it wasn't a handgun. This was something at least maybe, I thought, well, maybe it's a 223 or an AR-15. But I thought, well, if it was an AR-15, somebody would have just popped off a bunch of rounds, just,
Right.
to hear it or whatever. But there was one shot. And then there was a long pause and of a few minutes. I mean, several minutes went by, enough to where we really weren't even talking about it. And a second shot came. Now, we're up in the woods. Our camp's up in there a little ways. But, I kind of, me, when I was out at the trucks, even when there was a fire going or people had headlamps on, I would look up in there to see if I could see our camp. And we were pretty well obscured up in there. So I wasn't thinking that somebody was shooting at us or trying to scare us or something. I honestly think that maybe they were, poaching some deer in that field over there. But I could almost, at our campsite, climb right out of my chair, get almost down on my stomach, and I could see through a hole through the foliage there, and I could see all four of our vehicles, and I saw the vehicle leave, just a little sports car looking deal. But somehow while we're sitting there, they got to talking about, well, I guess we're going to get out tonight and do some calls. Well, that, of course, that piqued my interest right up. And I'm sure it did Spencer too. Now, he has a lot more experience with listening to vocals, hearing people do vocals or calls, and I don't. And I don't mess around with them. I've told people that, and I don't get out in the woods and do calls and tree knocks, and I don't do things that I don't understand. That's just me. So I thought, well, this will be great. We eventually went and loaded up, and the first thing we needed, and I think we left that campsite, I mean, we left it pretty late.
Yeah.
I mean, we left after it was well dark and on over to where, people aren't out running around the roads anymore. And then on top of that, we drove all the way south down the trace to Dover, to where I normally stop at the little Sonic, because Larry wanted to get a little gas, and I think people wanted to maybe get some snacks, and Spencer wanted some coffee, definitely. Because I think he was like me. He was running on, fumes too. Me, I hadn't had much sleep, and but we got down there and was doing that. Now this is kind of funny. I got to touch on this. Larry can just walk up to you and just say anything. I mean, if he walks up to you, you just don't know what he's going to say. I mean,
it's going to be kind of sarcastic most of the time.
Well, it's a real dry wit, but it can be something extremely abstract. If you walk, it can be anything about nothing that has to do with what you're even talking about. Even he's done that a few times to me. So people are in there getting drinks and coffee and stuff, and I gotta admit, it's pretty late, and we're maybe the only two vehicles really moving around at this time. And we whip into this little quick stop right there at the start of the trace, and we look pretty rough. And it was a pretty motley crew of folks of us coming out of those vehicles. And plus, it's late at night, too. So anything you're doing that late at night, I mean, it can't help but look suspect. You have to look suspicious. But everybody piles out, and in there they go, because there's real restrooms in there, and there's air conditioning in there. Well, I'm just sitting in the truck with Moose, just kind of hanging out. And Larry's up there pumping gas. And he comes walking back, and I'm just kind of watching everybody in the store moving around, looking out the window. Then I realize he's coming up to the dang truck, and he walks up. And I don't know what Larry's going to say. Man, we're going to go down here and do such and such. But he just looks at me and he goes, Bama, he goes, you don't eat much, do you? And I just died laughing. He said, and he goes, you ain't eating none of that fast food and stuff like that. And I'll get to this later on because I am really in my cooler, in and out, eating, because I have a pretty good diet and I'm eating stuff, but they're all getting ready, and then he just kind of moseys back to his vehicle. Well, everybody comes out, and here we go. I mean, I'm going to admit to you that after this, there's some parts that are blurry to me, and I'll explain to you why. And I discussed this with Mark already, and but anyway, we get back in the same vehicles we've been in, and off we go. Now, I'm following Larry. So a lot of times these roads we get off on, he has those lights on his Jeep that really light up everything. So when you're behind him, following him, it kind of feels like you're driving through a tunnel sometimes. The trees really, close in over the top of you. So I'm basically following him. And we get to what I'll call stop number 1, which was really uneventful, but it did teach me a few things. This is on just a paved road, and we stopped and pulled over. Now, we did come down seemed like a pretty substantial hill. We were in a low-lying area because everything looks the same at LBL at night. I mean, it just, everything looks the same. And we all got out. Now, I got Moose out this time. He's not crazy about the dark, and when you're in camp, he'll kind of set him up a little area that he feels safe in, and so when people would leave and come back from doing their business, he'd growl at them and stuff because people are wearing headlamps and he can't see who people are. But I got him out on this first stop, and we just all got out of the vehicles, and the first thing that I noticed that's a good tip is there's a few of us that had FLIRs. Now, I've got mine sitting here with me, but of course nobody can see me, but I've just got one of the little Scout TK FLIRs, which is great. I mean, you'd agree, Mark, it's great for what we use it for, basically.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got that thing out. Now, it's gotten a lot cooler, but it's still, the air is so heavy, and that dew point's so heavy that it's just, you're just so sticky. Even I kept asking Mark over and over, Mark, are you cold? I mean, have I got it too cold in here? Because I'm telling you what, I had the air in there cranking. And I was afraid that I was going to get Mark cold. But we got down there and we got out, and if you look at these little FLIRs, they have a green light on them if you don't cover them up. So it's easy to tell who has one of the Scouts because you can look around and see the green light on the FLIR. The people that had recorders, most of them had red lights on their recorders. So it was kind of easy to index where people were in the roadway, where they were around the vehicles and stuff like that. And one thing that's super interesting is this. Now, in the daytime, Debbie Jones, she even has a GoPro or a camera that she mounts right on her forehead, So if she's running from something or chasing something, I guess she can, film what she's looking at. But, everybody there had some piece of equipment, and the majority of people there, I'm the only one, I didn't have a recorder, but most people there had recorders with them. And you could see those kind of moving around. So when we first got out, you kind of let not just nature close back in around you, but your vehicles pop and they make noises as they're cooling down, and so you got these different metal noises and pops and stuff. And everybody, I noticed nobody really had to discuss this with each other, I don't think, but nobody ever slammed a door.
Yeah.
Everyone was extremely quiet. Nothing was ever above a whisper, except maybe once, and maybe that was me. But we kind of got out there, and I was kind of hanging close to Mark because he's easy to spot out there at night, and this is the reason. I told him I was going to tell this, and you can tell him what it is, Mark. But when he gets out with that recorder, I never saw this thing, but if you look over at him in the dark, his recorder is, holy mackerel, that thing's 9-10 feet up in the air, it seems like, because you can see the lights way up there. Isn't that right, Mark? It's like a telescoping thing.
Yeah, it's a monopod, and I have it mounted to the zoom, and that way I can just get it up above everybody and just sit there and hold it.
Well, the second I'm telling you, the second people get out of vehicles, the recorders are on. Let me change that. Before people get out of vehicles, the recorders are on. They're just turned on. Mark's out, man. He whips out that telescope and thing. I didn't know that it wasn't him just standing there holding his walking staff, with the thing on it. But I knew that thing was way up there. So I would kind of use him as he was one of my waypoints if I needed one. You know what I mean? And we kind of stood around out there for a few minutes, and it's really nice, but it seemed really closed in down there in those bottoms. Now, there was never a flashlight turned on, and we pulled up and stopped there so fast that I really didn't get a chance to look around with even my headlights when we pulled up. But this is the feeling I got when I pulled down there. It almost felt like there was a big culvert or a little bridge that ran under the road, judging by the sound of the water. And it seemed to me like maybe there was even a beaver dam or a beaver pond up in there, because on my FLIR, I caught, and I told Mark this at the time, I said, I got movement, and he goes, what is it? And I said, it moves like either a beaver or a raccoon. You know how they have that real bowed back movement when they move? Somebody did a call there. First time I'd ever heard somebody do a call, a legitimate one, because rightfully so, anytime you hear them talk about this stuff, they obscure their calls on their recordings and stuff. So somebody did a call there, and we just really didn't get no action there. The one thing I did notice, though, and I wanted to say this, is Moose hung close to me, but he also has a couple of tags on his collar that jingle. So I thought, I'm on the next stop, or the rest of the stops, I'm just going to leave him in the vehicle. Because literally when you get out, he will lay down. He's not going to make a noise or anything like that. Now, Spencer's had a time with him already this whole trip.
Yeah.
Because the truck will be dark, Moose will be in there, and all of a sudden the door opens up, the dome lights come on, and you have a stranger piling in there with you. and Moose is really a scaredy cat, but he would growl, make all kinds of noises, and 2 minutes later, he literally would be standing on Spencer's leg, looking out the window. So this is a type of relationship that they're developing this whole time, and this night that this is going on. But I know really that this, he's very well trained, and I know that this is taxing on him, these type of hours and stuff like that. I know that sounds crazy, but that's true. So we went on to the next spot, and this is probably what I'm going to spend the most time on, and I think it's what Spencer did too, but we had different experiences. So I don't know how far we drove, But if y'all can picture this, we're on a road and I see Larry pull over to the side, and it's obvious that this road runs between two huge fields. So as we're coming up to this area, I can see off to my left a huge field that's basically triangle shaped. I'm sorry, rectangle shaped, excuse me. And then there's a field to the right that's just so huge, I can't even see the top of it. I can't see the end of it or anything. Well, this is where Larry pulls over. Now, it is so clear that you can see, I could see stars and the Milky Way, and there was enough of that to where there was ambient light out there. You know, a little bit to where you could see each other moving around. Let's put it that way. But he pulled over. I backed my truck directly back into a spot, the only little place you could pull into. And if you can picture this, we all got out on this road. And the first thing we did is we all walked to one side of the road and we looked down on the field that was rectangle shaped. And the reason we did that is because there was a blanket of lightning bugs out there across that field. And I'm talking, oh, good Lord. I mean, I just thought there's got to be millions of them out there. Now think about this. Somebody made the comment, they said, look at the, as we pulled up, they said, look at the fog out there. Now recorders are going. Everybody's got recorders. Turn their FLIRs on. But we just can't get over these lightning bugs down there. And the dew point was so heavy that in that low-lying field, which was maybe, gosh, if you went off the side of that road, you were probably 15 yards higher than that field down there.
Uh-huh.
And it was bush hogged down maybe about 6 inches high to where, like I said before, it looked like you could take your shoes off and just run across there barefooted. So when you drive through there, gosh, it looks like a mowed grass lawn. That's how it looks. And that heavy dew point in that lower field hung over that field, so it made it look like a fog. But if you ever turned a headlight on or a headlamp on, which we didn't until we left, you could see that it was actually tiny water droplets. It's what was making it look like that. And I'm just kind of describing this for a reason. And we just stood there, and I had explained to Spencer earlier about synchronized fireflies and how in a certain place in the mountains where I go, it's so popular now that you have to take a tour up there to see these fireflies that when one of them lights up, they all light up. Well, that's what these were doing, wasn't they, Mark?
Yeah.
It was so beautiful that I think since me and Shelley had been rock hunting together, oh, look at this pretty rock. Well, I eased over towards her and I said, gosh, aren't those lightning bugs beautiful? And we're just kind of doing this and looking with our FLIRs, and I've spotted 2 deer in the middle of that field. I mean, they're smack in the middle of it together. Now, if you all turn around and look directly behind you, you're looking at another field mowed the same way, wide open field, but that thing made had a pretty steep grade to it. And if I would have looked at that as a kid, I would have thought, man, when there's snow on that, I bet you could sled down it. That's how I describe it to you. And it was bush hog or mowed really fine up through there too. Went straight up to just a flat, tree line. And we couldn't see the end of one end of that field. That's how big it was. Deer out there grazing too. Well, we stayed there a little while, let everything settle down, cars cool down, and somebody said, let's do a call. And I want to say, I think I heard Larry say, Shelley, you want to do a call? And I don't know I can't remember if she did or somebody else did, but when they did, They did it into that lower field, and the echo was so clear. I'm not talking about hearing it go off through the woods. No, it came back to you. When you did the call, it literally came back a second later. Something like when you're kids and you yell in an echo. I mean, everyone, when it happened, everyone, kind of whispered something like, wow, listen to that echo. So we'd been there a few minutes. The thing that I learned, I flipped through several different modes of my FLIR to figure out in that weather and that dew point and stuff, what would pick up the best. And I ended up on the black hot, is what they call it. In other words, anything that has, some significant body heat or heat will show up as black, and everything else is white. And I soon learned that even though it was dark out there, when I would watch those deer and remove it from my eye, I would kind of have a blind spot in front of my eye for a while. And me and Spencer talked about that. So I stopped using the FLIR except to look at the deer. Because if something happened, I wanted to watch the deer's reaction. That's what I wanted to see. And a lot of times when people are turned all looking one direction, I like to look the other direction. That's just something I do. So we'd been there a little while, and I'm just going to say this. There's hasn't been an uncomfortable time in the whole trip. Even when something walked right in front of the tent, and now that I know that wasn't Larry or somebody in one of the tents, even that wasn't uncomfortable. But as we stood here looking up that big hill, I can't explain to you how big this wide open field was. Mark, it had to be hundreds of acres.
Absolutely.
As it stretched back through there. But this is what's funny. You didn't have the fireflies, nor did you have that real thick dew pointish fog on that side of the road up the hill. It was a lot more clear. Well, somebody let out a call. Now, this was Larry did this call. Now, you hear him talk about calls, and they certainly shouldn't tell you how they do calls and stuff, but they called this a locator call. But anyway, he let loose with this thing, and it kind of surprised me because I didn't know it was coming, so, I kind of jumped a little bit. Because Larry's got a good set of lungs on him, and he does a real good call, too. And it's raspy, got a raspy sound to it. He cut loose with this call. And these calls are maybe of a cadence you've never heard before. Maybe they're but it interested me to hear that one. And he let that thing loose. And my first thing was, I thought, oh man, I'm going to wait for the echo to come back. Uh-huh. And we're all standing there. I'm standing closest to Mark and Spencer. And we're back at the rear of the Jeep with a little ways between us and the Jeep. Everybody else is up at the front of the Jeep, standing around up there. And this is according to all the little red and green lights moving around. That's what I'm telling you. When he let that call, the second that he was done with that, it was like I tell people that it was, to me, it sounded like a yell or something. It wasn't like a howl or anything like that. It was a yell that came back, and it was immediately, at the very end of it, there was a scream. Now, I went back over this and asked Spencer a couple of questions, and I'm going to get into this in just a second. But I said, was there any time when anyone was further down the road? Was there any time when anybody wasn't with us? And everybody was right there. Everybody's standing there with us. And I think we're probably going on, 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning?
Right.
Okay. If you have those vocals and you want to play those, I'll
tell you what, we'll play the first one. And so this first vocal, response is what we got after Larry made the call. So we'll play that one now.
Alrighty. And let me know when it's over, Mark, because I can't hear. You'll have to let me know when it's done, Mark, okay?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
It's done. Okay, one thing that I noticed that what impressed me with Bama is when these calls first started, when we got a response, is everybody pointed in the direction that it came from. Usually so many times you hear people say, "Did you hear that?" What?
Yeah.
and everybody did, just as what an audio person would want to see, because if you go to talking and you get a second response, well, you're talking over the response, and so
Right.
it really makes it difficult when looking at it on the spectrogram. So give us your thoughts after we got the first response.
Well, right before Larry let that call, and I didn't know he was going to do it, I think I was the furthest one away from everybody because I'd kind of stepped maybe 5 yards back, and I was kind of in front of the grill of my truck where I'd backed in. But now my truck's away from me. It's not that close. And because I was really watching another little herd of deer. I don't know. How many you think there was, Mark? Maybe 5, 6. And there's a couple of there was some whoppers up there. And I was watching them with the FLIR way off in the right side of this field that we're talking about that goes up. And Larry let that call go. I have to tell you, when I got back here from this trip, there's really only 2 people I really talked to, and because I know they'll believe me. And I sat down. One of them's my friend Kel, and she's babysitting Moose right now, by the way. But anyway, she got me something to eat and was waiting on me by the time I got back. And I'm going to tell you exactly the way I told her, because the way my mind works, and Mark and them will know this from maybe just a few days they've been with me, things fit into exacts. And you know, I always say that everything fits somewhere into my mind. When he did this call, I immediately heard this yell come back, and in a span of maybe about, now think about this, for maybe 5 seconds is a long time, but in a span of 5 seconds, I went through several different feelings and emotions in my head. The first one was confusion. When it yelled back, I was immediately confused because I thought right then, that is not a person. That is not, my brain said that several times inside my head out loud to me. That's not a person. That's not a person. And that confused me for a second. And then there was just a little twinge of, oh, okay, man, that, you know, man, somebody's trying to pull something on me, you know. But even though everybody was facing in different directions, when that first yell came, every arm and every finger you could see in that ambient light pointed towards that top left corner of that field. Everyone pointed in the same direction. Now my mind's trying to, even I pointed that direction with all this going on. So my mind's trying to process. I'm confused. I know that's not a person. I just kept saying that. I know that's not a person. That's not a person up there. Because as that sound came down that hill and you could kind of pinpoint where it was, you realize how far away it was.
Yeah.
Even across that mowed, beautiful field with that little bit of dew point hanging on it. You know, the sound would travel pretty good. But you just realize the distance that traveled quickly. I mean, you wouldn't believe how fast it got there. And then there was a scream right behind it. And that scream, since I've heard it, I have ordered an Aztec death whistle. And I've got it in the house, and the moose hates it. Because when you blow that thing, it really is terrifying. And the more lung capacity or the harder you can blow into that thing, the higher the scream is. And when I got that thing, I could not wait to try it out because it was the closest thing that sounded to that scream. So that really shook me enough to where I kind of eased over where Spencer was at, and he had his recorder going, of course, and you just heard some of those audio from him. And I said something that I probably shouldn't have had, but something along the lines of, can you believe this? That wasn't what I said, though. But, can you believe this? And he told me, he shushed me, which was cool. And but here's what's really funny. Of the few conversations back and forth via Facebook, they said that we stayed a long time after that. To me, looking back on that, I think we only stayed 4 or 5 minutes and got in our vehicles and left. I don't remember. I don't even remember getting in the vehicle now I think about it. But I do not. Now, here's my disclaimer. Let's not throw infrasound into the mix, and let's not any of that stuff. I'm just saying that shook me to the point that I thought we left right after that. Nor do I remember us getting to the next place that we went to. It really was, it's almost like a compressed time down for me for some real, that's the only way I can explain it to you. If you have any questions about that one spot, Mark, now's the time to ask it while I'm still on it.
Well, that was really amazing to me when you communicated that.
Let me say this, and this is the God's honest truth. When I got back, I sat at my bar eating the food that Kel had brought me, because I lost 9 pounds on this little trip.
Wow.
But just dehydrated, not bit. But so I told her the story. Well, I basically told the whole weekend, but about stop number 2. And when I told her, she sat there, and this is what I said. And I've since asked another friend of mine. I said, "You're my friend. You're my friend." And they go, "Yeah." I said, "If I were going crazy, would you tell me?" I go, you're my friend close enough that you would tell me. And both of them said, "Yes, we would tell you." And my buddy goes, "It has to be." He goes, "Man, it just has to." He goes, "I know you." He goes, it has to be. And this is a New York Manhattanite I'm talking to. This isn't even a country boy. But he goes, "It has to be." And but that really kind of, I've thought about that a lot. And we haven't really talked about that much. and I haven't really heard that much audio on it because everybody has audio recorders. I don't remember anybody doing any calls after that one at that spot, but I think they had me do a call, but I don't really remember what I did.
What?
But that was really that was the thing that, man, if you ever went with somebody, or, I mean, I think it was just, I mean, we hit it lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to hit it lucky on that, even though that was a hot spot where we stopped. I mean, we had the perfect storm and just the way it was set up and the temperature and just everything, I think. But, that's just me.
I am really curious and about when you told me that it seemed like that we were only there about 5 minutes, and we cut the recorders on before we get out of the vehicle, and we don't turn them off till we get back in the vehicle. And it was like 38 minutes that we were at that
Did that
stop.
not surprise me when you said that?
It just, I guess it just kind of blows my mind, and I'm still steeping on it. And
when you and I were speaking earlier, I told you, I said, Mark, how can that be 38 minutes? I said, I thought it was 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
That really, I explain it like this to people. If you ever watch The Price is Right, well, they have a game called Plinko, and you put the thing on there, and it goes down through these different nails, and it kind of goes all over the place, and it ends up in a slot. Well, when that first yell came, man, that Plinko'd my brain. It didn't have a place to go because, man, I just knew that I was experiencing something that, of course, I'd never heard before. But the thing that my mind kept repeating over and over, that's not a man, that's not a man, that's not a man. It kept saying that to me. And like you said, it probably was that big adrenaline dump. Of course, that's really great to have that adrenaline dump, because then we went on to, oh, goodness, the next stop number 3.
Okay, before we go to stop number 3, yes. I want to play the second round of response vocals that we got, and I'm going to play them now, and I will let you know when it's done playing.
All right.
Now, when we heard that second round of vocals, I was pretty much convinced that this is boogers that we're hearing. And of course, as we always put the disclaimer out, unless you see one actually vocalizing, then you can't say that it was a Bigfoot. But what was going through my mind is I cannot wait to get this and throw it on the spectrogram so I can eliminate whether it's canine or any other type of known animal in the area. And I think that whenever we heard these vocals, everybody was just pumped up.
Well, like I say, I'm kind of taking into consideration the fatigue, that I was feeling anyway, and just I've been staying hydrated and stuff, but we're kind of eating on the run. But yes, that's why I asked so many questions after that site, was where was everybody standing? Where did this take place? And just because I'm telling you, man, that really, it did something to me when I heard that. It was almost like, it's kind of like your mind has a few puzzle pieces that are missing. And when that happens, you're like, oh, there's a big puzzle piece right there. And it's got some place to go finally. It was kind of one of those things. Now, if you want to go and talk about the next spot, it's kind of a blur to me getting there. I told you the rest of the night is extremely fuzzy to me, but I do remember our next stops that we made, because we weren't done. I mean, we were out for a while. But I just want to make sure nobody has a question about that particular one or anything, because that was really the big one for me. If I were sitting in person with somebody, I could talk about that one stop for an hour.
Well,
which I apologize for, by the way.
I think that had everybody's adrenaline pumping, and Larry come over and whispered to me and says, "Let's take them to the creepy spot."
Well, let me say this. Yeah, let me say this one thing. If ever there were a time when you could say the words, recordings do not do justice to what you heard, that spot was the time.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can get into I'm not going to get into it, but if you would go back to Spencer's episode, Larry got some FLIR hits up there, tree peaking, moving from tree to tree. I vaguely remember him talking about that, even though I was looking up there with my FLIR. Everything was really jumbled to that spot as we went to the creepy spot. Now, if you want to preface anything before the creepy spot, go ahead and do that. But we just go say anything about that spot that you want to.
Well, I just whenever we turned off the road onto the gravel road to go to the creepy spot, you mentioned something to me, and this just really paints the picture that it's almost like you get claustrophobic.
That's it. That I've got that. I've taken a lot of notes, and if you looked at my notes right here, if you were able to see me, I would hold it up, and it says claustrophobic in huge letters.
Yeah.
Because that's really now I don't remember getting there. Now here's the funny thing. I told you about Larry walking up to your vehicle. We're going out that road, and I didn't know we were going to a cemetery. I just thought we're going out some remote road. Well, I look up, and there's a mud bog beside. It's huge, right in the middle of the road. Well, Larry stops, comes walking back there, and that gets my attention. Up until this point, I'm kind of in a dream type of state, but he walks back there and he goes, "Bama?" He goes, "Are you sure you want to take your truck through that?" Because he's got a Jeep and a winch and all that stuff like that. But me, I can see where he goes and where he drives. I'm like, sure. And it ended up not being bad. But we ended up getting back into a spot, and honestly, I didn't know it was a cemetery. And Mark, you and Larry can tell me how this happened, but I don't remember how we got turned around facing out. I don't know if there was a little road that circled the cemetery where you could face back out. I don't remember any of that. I simply remember when we finally got there, standing outside the vehicle in a cave, it seemed like.
Yeah. Yeah. We're at dead end. It just opened up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Just enough that you could cut your vehicle as far over close to the cemetery and then just cut your wheels all the way and face your vehicle out.
I promise you, I do not remember doing any maneuvering or anything like that. But we ended up with Larry's Jeep in front of my truck, and I didn't even know there was a cemetery, but it was to the left of our vehicles, and to the right is the thickest stuff you've ever seen. Now, nobody's turned lights on or headlamps on or anything, but I can see there's so much little ambient light, but just from getting out with the dome lights, there's a gate down there with some reflectors on it. Now, I noticed everybody facing that gate and, holding recorders that direction. And I asked Mark, I said, why are we concentrating on the gate? Has anybody ever heard anything down there, seen anything? And they said, I don't think so.
The thing about the gate is that's another one of these suspicious gates that they close up and restrict you from driving off in there. And so that's just kind of a clue to us. If we find one of them gates, we want to park near one and then just take off hiking down it.
Right.
Because there is a reason why they close these roads. And it may be Bigfoot related. It may not be Bigfoot related. But it's very suspicious that they would close a good road off that.
Well, everybody's looking that direction, so I didn't want my back to the cemetery. So I basically turned straight around, and I'm fleeing because it is so silent and it is so claustrophobic and dark that, there's nothing. There's not a sound. The only sound is whatever's in your own ears, just it's almost like being in a cave. It's so dang spooky that Shelley Reed is in the vehicle. And I'm saying that because this is late, and like I said, we're all very tired. And I told Mark, I said, is Shelley like going to take her little cat nap, for 20, 30 minutes, I thought. Because I had thought about it myself. That's how long we're into this. And Mark just said, he goes, this place, Shelley doesn't feel really comfortable here. Now, if Shelley doesn't feel comfortable there, then there's something to it.
Yeah.
But somebody did a couple of calls there. I think Spencer did. And this is a place, man, when you do a call, it ends right there. It don't go through woods. It don't echo. It sounds like you just did a call up against a soundproof wall. It just stops. But I listened so hard for insects. I listened for anything and may have heard a tiny twig or something one time off in that really, really thick area there. It felt like a heavy weight on me from the time I pulled in till the time I left. Like somebody just threw a big cloak, a weight over me. That's the feeling I got there. And I don't know if we got any vocals there. I don't know if we got anything from there. I think I was in strictly survival mode at this time.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I know you're ready to wrap it up here, Mark. Uh, the last stop we made, you could play those vocals if you want to, because I know that Spencer, I think, got some pretty good ones there.
Yeah, I don't have those vocals set up.
Okay.
Uh, but
But
but really, what the fourth stop, you didn't get out, and I think that's what Shelley was really experiencing on that third stop is, when that adrenaline, you get that adrenaline, and you start coming down off that adrenaline rush. It zaps you mentally and physically.
Yeah, and it's like I told you, even as we went to the last stop number 4, man, I had the air cranking. I even turned the radio on. Mark is a nice person to have a conversation with, when you're riding around. I think we have a lot in common. But, that had drained me so much, that one stop. And maybe it was just the whole fatigue and everything. But, I got pretty quiet. And even when we finally did get back out on the trace, there's a couple of times where I was just, out and out sleepy. But I didn't get out the last stop. I thought, because they were going to be directly in front of my vehicle anyway. And I rolled the window down. They did a couple of calls, and that's when they got, I could hear the coyotes and stuff come back. But we were way down in a low area,
And that's a creepy spot. Because
that is, man. It is.
Because if something comes out of that wood line, you're right up against it. And
you're against it, and it has the high ground on you, too.
Yeah, yeah.
The way that y'all were yelling. To the back of us was a little field, and I think that's close to where we saw, I do remember seeing a hog cross, and that's one of the biggest dang hogs I've ever seen. But the thing that surprised me is the amount of noise it made going through the woods. If you didn't have a FLIR and you heard that big hog coming, you wouldn't know what it was. In our vehicle, we could hear it making that noise, but I didn't know if you had that audio or not. But that spot was a pretty good spot too. And just briefly, I'm just trying to kind of get through it here because I'm running long, but we eventually got back to camp and parked. I can't tell you, I don't even remember walking from the truck across that field to the campsite. We had a bunch of firewood made up. Nobody started a fire. I think everybody was pretty, tapped out. Because, we'd already talked about, we're going to sit around and talk about what we've done and stuff. And I'm telling you, when we got back, I was out. I don't really even remember getting in the tent, but I thought this is it for me, and I was out. I think there was even a little time-lapse video that you shot, Mark, of our camp that night, and I think Spencer went in there and just passed out of sleep so fast that he left his light on in his tent all night because there was a light on in his tent all night, and I know that he was out too, but and I did. I slept then. I still woke up early, but man, I slept that second night. Something could have just stomped all through camp, and I wouldn't even woke up, the second night. But yes, I was wound up all the way back home, and usually I'm falling asleep on the way back. But I was wound up, and I kind of hung. I kind of hung on to that for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That feeling because I could still hear it in my head, and I just thought that it has to be. Me, I'm trying to explain stuff away, But just to sum it up, that's if anybody wants to know what you're doing out there, well, that's what we're doing out there. It's not people sitting around the campfire throwing beer cans at each other and lots of celebratory gunfire and stuff. We're just, really, it's just, and honestly, Mark and all y'all were just very accommodating. I know that y'all were really there for us, and mainly there for Spencer.
Well,
But
you
it was
know,
just it was a great week. It was a weekend that changed me a lot, and I think I made some friends for life off that weekend.
well, this is our whole persona about our Beast page is we're here to help people, and we're here to share, and we're also here to learn, because as you will hear all of us say, that the more that we think we know, the more we realize we don't know. And so
Right.
we're looking to we were there to learn from each other, and to learn from Spencer, and to learn from you.
Let
And
me tell you what, man. Oh, Spencer, he's the type. He's walking through the woods and pulling cedar bark and stuff off trees and putting it in his pockets, and next thing you know, man. Well, let's get us a fire started, man. That guy can whip up a fire in just a minute.
yeah,
And incidentally, I literally saw him sharpen a stick, put a big steak on the end of it, and just put it right in the fire and cook it.
I tell you,
No,
that was an awesome steak.
that was one of the best pieces of steak I've ever eaten. Was
Yeah,
literally laid right on the hot coals of that fire, and it was good.
yeah, yeah.
It was just it was a good. It was a rough time, but it was a very good weekend.
Okay,
I
Bama.
hope that I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties, and it's coming a storm outside, but I hope I've been able to convey it to everybody okay, because I don't really get together with people and talk about it that much. So I hope like I always say, I hope I've been worth your time.
Well, you have done it justice. And technical difficulties are going to happen. That's one thing about doing a live podcast. And things will happen, and it's nothing to fret over. But we've got some. Let's go ahead and ask you a few questions,
All right.
and that has
I'll try to be brief for you.
uh, Spencer wanted is asking, why does Moose growl at every time, all the time? And I'll chime in. What I noticed that when Moose would growl at me is if I would disappear off in the woods for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden here comes something that's walking up out of the woods, making a beeline towards camp.
And, we have headlamps on a lot of the time when we're in camp, so he can only see maybe from your knees down. But yeah, he liked Spencer, and Spencer sat behind me in the truck, and Moose likes to get in that floorboard. So, sometimes you look back there and Spencer be sitting there, and Moose is just in a floorboard between his knees sitting there. So, but no, he loves that dog. We've been talking about willing Moose to Spencer's family if something happens to him. Yeah.
Okay, Rodney Beasley asked, did you camp on the Kentucky side? And I'll answer that. And we were on the Tennessee side, and we were pretty close to the middle, in between the waterways. And
Yeah.
Orphan 97 asked, have you ever had any experience close to, let's see, I just lost it, LBL B.E.A.S.T site? And
Now, right.
uh
You can take that one too, really.
yeah,
Because I've only been there once, and I know Orphan lives up that way.
yeah,
And is very familiar with that area. That's
we
the only time I've ever been to that area, that beast site.
we haven't done a lot of camping up there. Larry and I has a couple of times, but uh, so I don't know. We people talk about the north end and the south end, but we have had good luck on whether if it's the Kentucky side or the Tennessee side, and I think it's just of really the luck of the draw, and so that's
Yeah.
one reason why we go out and we make locator calls. Now,
I think we came out real lucky. I
yeah,
mean, everything fell into place for us to get it that good at that one spot.
okay. Now here's a question from Shelley.
Oh,
What was your favorite experience or part of the whole weekend?
well, stopping at spot number two. We say spot number two. What do we call that? Do we call that Firefly Meadows? Is that what we call it?
Debbie named it.
Okay.
But
And that's a great name.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Uh, apart from being at that spot and the things that happened, I mean, that was the highlight of. Gosh, I kind of told my friend, I said, I don't know. I said that really kind of did something to me. It affected me that much. That was great, but really, just kind of hanging out. There's times when we were pulling up, Mark. You can say this, and we were eating on the tailgate and just
yeah.
hanging out and talking about all kinds of things. That was the best part. That's why I hope when we do get to do our meet and greet up there in LBL, man, everybody needs to come. That's the best
Yeah.
part of it. And maybe I can be quiet and just listen to people for a change.
That would be no
But man,
fun.
that's the best part. Well, that's the best part is sitting and kind of hanging out with people. Because I'd seen Shelly I've listened to her on podcasts. I've listened to lots of her stories, as I have all of you. But I like Shelly. We were rock hunting together, and it was that really was the thing about it is meeting some people that you very quickly become comfortable with being around.
Okay, we have one last question, and CD Squatcher,
Yep.
and and we kind of know the answer to this is, how did Moose react when there was a possible Bigfoot close by? And I guess he's talking about the response calls we got.
Well, like I said, I left him in the truck at the same time because he had that little jingle to his collar, and I keep him on a short lead when I'm out with him at night like that. Or I did with y'all. Normally, I just let him run loose and kind of watch him on the FLIR. But I'm sure that he was in there. Of course, he had to hear everything that was going on in the vehicle. But I don't know if he would have even differentiated between one of our calls and what came back from there. That really is how. When I first got him and started training him, I used to make whoop noises because that's the way we would call beagles when we were deer hunting and stuff. And I very quickly stopped doing stuff like that around him or anything that resembled any type of a call like that. But I'm pretty sure he was sacked out in the back of that vehicle. every time Spencer would climb in that vehicle, bless Spencer's heart and Moose's heart, because I know what Moose was doing, but man, Moose would you would think he was so ugly acting when he'd get just, because he was this person piling in out of the dark. But I don't know. I think he probably just kind of was hung out in the truck because we were, oh, goodness gracious, he had to be more tired than us. He probably walked 10 times as far as us this whole trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to start wrapping this up, but Bama, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on, and I would like to give you these last couple of minutes and tell us your final thoughts.
Well, thanks for everybody's patience with the technical difficulties. You know, marketing, they put a lot of work into this show, and if you are around them, you know, they're planning stuff for the next week, and so you know, not just for me, but you know, give them a thumbs up and go over to our B.E.A.S.T page and our Facebook page. We're new members over there, and man, it's great. And there's all kinds of stuff on there. You can sit there and look at videos and all kinds of stuff, and it's just it's a neat thing to be involved in. I appreciated getting to go with them. I felt like they trusted me, and that's why they let me go, and I really appreciate that, because I know I got to hear some things, folks, that not the average person gets to hear. Even the calls that they were doing and stuff were pretty awesome. And I'm practicing them in the house, by the way.
I practice mine at Walmart.
You might call some up at Walmart. But no, I appreciate your time, and you know, look at the bright side. You didn't have to look at me for the whole show, and I actually feel more comfortable just speaking like this anyway. But I hope that y'all are worth your time, and it really kind of got it all off the chest of that thing, to tell you the truth. I appreciate it.
Well, we thank you so much, Bama, for coming on. And like you said earlier in the show, I know as far as Larry and I, we feel like that we have met a friend for life. And so we are just...
Well, I appreciate that.
And actually, I don't know how much I should say about this. On Larry's channel, if you haven't subscribed to Beast of the Woods, you need to go and check out Larry's channel. And because we are going to do a Catfish Day video, and we want Bama to be there, because this is really his spot. And we want Bama to come, and we're going to make a Catfish Day video.
See, now they're going to be trying to drag me everywhere. I have to admit, when they did go to my campsite, though, everybody said, "Oh yeah, this is a good place to camp." But yeah, I'm sure that we'll be together soon. I'm going to head for the mountains, probably in North Carolina, maybe here in a couple of weeks, and mess around up there for a little while. But I'm really, and I know it's a ways off, but I'm looking forward to that, our meet and greet. Yeah. And I hope that everybody that's listening and in the chat room and stuff like that, man, I hope they're looking forward to it too. Yeah. We won't be sweating and clammy and covered in bug spray the whole time.
Larry, have you got any final thoughts?
Yes. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Treat others as you would want them to treat you. Have a good night.
Well, that was short and sweet. And
well, I'll have to listen. See, I can't hear Larry or anybody else, so I'm going to have to go make sure he didn't say something about me.
All right. Well, we thank you a lot again, Bama, for coming on.
Well, thank y'all.
And we'll be talking to you soon.
All righty, sir. I'm just going to hang up since I can't see you anymore.
Okay. Good
night, everybody. Come over on the Facebook page, and we'll talk about all of it. So everybody have a great night.
B.E.A.S.T TV would like to welcome all of our new Facebook members. I don't know how or why, but we are adding about 40 people twice a week. So if you haven't been added yet, it's just because we're kind of spacing it out so we don't clog up our page. But we've got a wealth of information on there, and you can find a lot of things in our file tabs. And we've got videos, pictures of evidence, and so we just want to thank everybody for their interest and coming on board with our Facebook B.E.A.S.T TV. We also want to thank all of our new subscribers and our faithful followers. Also, be sure to check out our field evidence videos and check out our sister channel, Beast of the Woods. That's Larry's channel. You will find a link at the end of this video. We do these podcasts and videos for you. So if you really want to help us out, click the like button, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. We appreciate all of our new subscribers. Larry and I want to thank our moderators for that works our chat room and helps keep it clean. We always want to make sure that our chat room, that children can come on and it will be kid friendly. Thanks again to each of you for watching, and we will see you again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night night, footers.
This has been a Sawdust production.